Chess Diagnostic.
Hello everybody and welcome back for another video. Today we're going to look at a very interesting game that Hikaru Nakamura thought was pretty interesting at the Gibraltar chess tournament. This is a game between Levon Aronian and David Howell. Now there's this clip circulating around the internet of Nakamura couldn't believe that Aronian got himself into this position, and I wanted to look at the game, so let's go through it. Once we understand it, it's actually kind of funny to see how this can improve our own chess understanding and what Aronian did wrong. So we're going to look at it from the white side because that's the side that Nakamura was seeing Aronian playing, and he just couldn't understand how he got this position. So Aronian starts with e4, and then we see c6, and Aronian goes for the exchange. Now, as I've talked about before, white can go for the Botvinnik variation, which is basically white plays on the queen side, and black just tries to hang on and weaken white's pawns as he advances them. Instead, we see just the bishop develop and then c3. So I want to talk about a moment here in terms of our own chess understanding. Now, just because you see a super grandmaster play something or even a computer recommend something like these moves, you need to think about your own understanding, and also, once you understand the whole game, to go back and see how specific moves led to you having a less active position and leading to a loss. So it's really all about activity, and you need to kind of do a post-mortem of where your activity or which moves led to you having reduced activity. So this c3 move is an example of that. He could have developed a knight to e2 or f3 to protect this d4 pawn, but instead he moved the pawn. It's a solid move, but it's really not the best. All right, so queen to c7, and then we see another pawn move, h3, which, maybe somebody will say that this is theory. I'm not sure, but it really doesn't matter if you're violating basic principles. It's like saying you can violate gravity and be okay. It's the fundamental element of chess is piece activity. So if you violate that, you're going to have problems later down the road. All right, so then we see g6, obviously developing that bishop, fianchettoing it, and then castling kingside. A good plan. Another queen move. All right, so this doesn't really increase white's activity, and actually it reduces his queen's activity for really no reason. And now we see f6 preparing to play e5 and just running these pawns down the board. So Aronian, because of the threat of e5, has to develop the knight to a less active square. Because if he played knight to f3, then after e5, the fork is threatened and white has some problems already. All right, so then we do see e5, castles, and now black can play already e4, although white has an out with bishop to b5, but even at that point, it's rather difficult for white, and his activity is definitely reduced. All right, so black doesn't play that because he doesn't want to give the f4 square to white, but after a couple of moves, takes. So notice that white traded his only active center pawn, and now black is really threatening e4 and some trouble. And here, Aronian makes a simple tactical blunder. I was talking in some previous videos about how a lot of times, you win not because you had some genius idea, but just because your opponent basically made a simple tactical blunder. And this is even happening here at the Super Grandmaster level. We see c4, and now what's the move you would play as black? All right, so the bishop is trapped with e4. And now Aronian has simply lost a piece, and after a couple of moves, this was the position that Nakamura saw, and he couldn't believe Aronian just simply lost a piece for zero compensation. All right, so it looks like he could have took here. So let's go through that line. All right, so if white would have taken the pawn, then there's really nothing he can do after takes because the queen has to take, and then he can simply threaten the queen there. So he doesn't actually win a piece. So it's a simple tactical entrapment of the bishop. All right. So let's go a couple of moves forward. He has to take. He gets 2 pawns. Now the problem, though, is that if he takes his pawn with the queen after bishop to f5, then actually white is just down a piece. with much less activity, and he'll basically be forced to just trade his queens and go into a miserable ending that will surely be lost. Instead, he doesn't do that. He tries to develop, but after all the minor pieces develop, all right, so he tries to just trick Howell. He knows he's lost at this point. Of course, if black takes, then this knight will be pinned, and actually he'd get back to equal position. But of course, Howell doesn't allow that. He just moves the queen. And Aronian has done some good moves, basically getting all his minor pieces out with some tempos. But after the bishop comes in, rook comes in, he's basically just desperately lost after the queen moves, and he plays a blunder here. And this was a position after knight takes that Nakamura was looking over, and he couldn't believe what he was seeing. So it looks rather messy, and it's totally messy, but what he noticed was that white is a piece down with weak pawns and the black knight attacking him. Now the queen can come over here and give kind of a spite check, but after, the knight moves either from E or back, then there's really nothing that white can do. He has no play, no attack, and actually black rather has the attack with something like E3 or just castling and, staying stable, even bringing his bishop out and going for a kingside attack. All right, so let's see what happened here. Instead of that check, we saw just queen to B3. Now the knight goes back, and he's really trying to just give himself some open lines, preventing black from castling kingside. The queen just takes the pawn. He's really trying to just trade now black at this point. And these moves are rather inconsequential. Trading, trying to win that pawn, and now bishop to F5, threatening discovery, blockades the pawn with a hit on the queen. Now he's threatening some, rather non-venomous discovery. The rook comes in. He gives a check. And then another tactical mistake after rook to D5, hitting the queen. What is the final move by black? It is bishop to E6, pinning that rook, and now he's going to lose tons of material, white will, after this knight is sitting there, and this rook is pinned to the queen, because if the rook takes, then he just takes here, and it's all over. He's just traded down, and black has an extra piece. White has some weak pawns too as well. All right, so this was a rather interesting game in terms of seeing how a super grandmaster can, from the opening, violate the principles of activity, make some simple tactical blunders like we all do, and then just fall apart. It's rather rare to see players at that level do that, and I think that's why Nakamura was looking over, saying, how could this happen? But it does happen even to the best of us. So, it's not good to see a super grandmaster fall apart like that, but it is encouraging in terms of it can happen to anybody. So don't feel bad if it happens to you. It happens to everybody all the time, and the best we can do is learn from it and improve. All right, so thanks for watching this video, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye. Thanks for watching Chess Diagnostic. I encourage you to subscribe and hit the bell so you receive all the notifications when I release a new video. If you want to support the channel, you can do so through PayPal, cryptocurrency, or you could check out the Chess Diagnostic apparel shop, where I have all kinds of designs that I made myself for t-shirts, hoodies, and I'll add new designs weekly. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the future.
Everywhere that you want to.